What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Last Word Sports Podcast. I'm your host tonight, Scott Caverts. I know it's been a while since my last solo vid, but we're getting right back into it. And tonight we're talking about Dak Prescott, the franchise quarterback, or hopefully franchise quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys, and what's going on with him right now, his contract situation, and what I think he should do and what I think the Cowboys should do. And I do think there's a good point where both teams can kind of meet in the middle and get to a point where they agree on things. So let's start off. A ton of people are saying that it's actually Dak's a pretty polarizing quarterback, because the thing is, a ton of people are saying Dak is like one of the best quarterbacks in the league. He's a top 5 QB. You look at all the stats, Dak's phenomenal. He's 4th in the NFL in QBR, which QBR isn't really a stat that you can kind of fake as much as like passing yards or something. QBR, number 1's Lamar Jackson, number 2's Patrick Mahomes, number 3 is Drew Brees, number 4 is Dak Prescott, number 5 is Russell Wilson. So that's a legitimate, the top guys are at the top. You look at passing yards, Dak was 2nd in the league in passing yards. That's very impressive. He threw for 4,902 yards. But at the same time, the top 5 guys in the league around him were like Jared Goff, Matt Ryan, Jameis Winston. None of them made the playoffs, so QBR is a lot more impressive. He's high in that as well. He threw 30 touchdowns, the 4th most in the NFL, and only 11 interceptions. So Dak had a very good year statistically. Unfortunately, his Dallas Cowboys were favored to win by Vegas in 15 out of their 16 games and finished with a very measly 8-8 record. So not super impressive in terms of actually winning football games. And that's the thing that Dak has usually been good at. Early in his career, his rookie year actually, he's a 4th-round pick. He filled in for Tony Romo when he got injured, and the Cowboys were like 13-3, best record in the NFC. Went to got a first-round bye. They lost a close playoff game to the Packers at home. But Dak, early in his career, was always winning games. He's won 2 division titles already. He's only played 4 years. And the knock on him was always he was dinking Dak, threw short passes, didn't get any good stats. He was just, kind of a game manager winning games with a super talented team. And now it's the opposite. Cowboys went 8-8. They actually fired Jason Garrett after this year because of it. And Dak's putting up just prolific numbers. So here's my problem with Dak, though, and a lot of his numbers. If you look at the teams that he played, he had a pretty easy schedule, is what a lot of people say. And people counter that by saying he had to play tough games like against New England and New Orleans. And yeah, he did have to play tough teams, but I side more with the people who say he had an easy schedule because he got all of his crazy stats against bad teams. You look at his schedule this year. The Cowboys start off 3-0. Everybody's talking Super Bowl for Dallas. But the first 3 games, they played the Giants, Washington, and Miami, who all have like top 5 picks. They were all terrible. In his first game against the Giants, he throws 4 touchdowns, no picks. Next game against the Redskins, first game he had a perfect passer rating. Next game against the Skins, he completes 87% of his passes for 3 touchdowns. Has a great game. Next week they play Miami. Dak actually doesn't play that great. He's 19 of 32 with 2 touchdowns and 1 pick, 91 passer rating. But they beat that crap out of Miami because Miami's terrible. Dak actually had a string right here in the middle of the season with 4 consecutive games with a passer rating under 92. And those are when you play the better teams, and you just can't show up like that. Like against New Orleans, Dak is 22 of 33 for 220 yards, no touchdowns, and an interception. They scored 10 points. Bad game. Against Green Bay, Dak throws 3 interceptions, more interceptions than touchdowns. He's 27 of 44 passing. Not very impressive. Then they lose to the New York Jets. The New York Jets in Sam Darnold's first game back with mono. It's really embarrassing. He had no touchdowns against the freaking Jets. So then the next week, they blow out Philadelphia, kind of get back on track. But again, Dak is just, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, 230 yards, nothing unbelievable. And then you see he plays the Giants and throws for 3 touchdowns and a high passer rating. Again, just beating up on bad teams. They lose at home to Minnesota. Dak plays pretty well. He has 400 yards and 3 touchdowns, but he throws a pick, and he's 28 of 46 passing. Then the next week, they play Detroit, and what do you know? Detroit, who also has a top 4 draft pick and is terrible, the Cowboys beat them, and Dak has 444 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. So then the next week, they play a good team, like New England. Dak is 19 of 33 with no touchdowns and an interception, and they score 9 points. 9 points. The division was so weak that Philly, they had guys coming off the streets playing wide receiver. They had undrafted free agents playing wide receiver. They went 9-7 and they won the division. Dallas got to feast on terrible teams like Washington and the Giants, and they still couldn't win the division. They lost to New England. They lost by double digits at home to Buffalo. Dak was just average. They lost to Chicago, and Mitchell Trubisky just shredded them. Again, Dak was 27 of 49 passing with only one touchdown. Next week, they blow out the Rams, which was kind of crazy, and everybody thinks the Cowboys are going to get back on track and win the division. And then Dak goes and lays an egg at Philly, and they lose 9-17. He's 25 of 44 passing with no touchdowns. You just can't do it. And then in the final week of the year, he throws 4 touchdowns against the Redskins again. So if you look at his 30 touchdowns, he got 8, 11, 13. He got 13 of those 30 touchdowns. It's almost half in 4 games where he played. Actually, he got 16 of his 30, more than half, in 5 games this year. And in those 5 games, he played the Giants, Washington, Miami, and Detroit. And he played Washington twice over that stretch. So Dak, even though his numbers are great, Pro Football Focus, who analyzes all the advanced analytics and everything, super great at stats, they gave him an 80 overall grade for the season, and they ranked him as the 10th best quarterback in the league. So again, Dak's good, but he's just outside that top tier. He's not quite, this guy's an MVP caliber player. He's gonna win me the Super Bowl. Some people think he can. Some people don't think he can. He's not like a surefire. He's incredible, but Dak's a very good quarterback. I would say I agree with Pro Football Focus. I'd put him as probably the 10th best quarterback in the league. And that's kind of where he's been at for his career. He's kind of shifted between like top 8 and top 15 for most of his first 4 years. And Dak is a free agent now because he was a 4th-round draft pick, so he didn't have the 5th-year option as a rookie because he wasn't a first-rounder. So the Cowboys are kind of at a crossroads because they went 8-8 last year, and Dak needs a new contract now. He's a free agent. But they're kind of unsure where to go because they went 8-8. Dak's numbers were impressive, but they didn't win. And at the same time, Amari Cooper and Byron Jones, their best receiver and best cornerback, are also free agents. So they're in a tough spot. They got to decide who to sign. They gave Zeke a big contract last offseason. So Dallas is kind of pressed for money a little bit. And they have $73 million in cap. So they do have a good amount of cap, and Jerry Jones is willing to spend to keep guys. Now, for Amari Cooper, I think you have to keep him at least for another year because he gave up a first-round pick for him. And when he's on the field, he's been super great for Dak Prescott. Dak's numbers are way better with him, although he's kind of inconsistent, bad on the road, and he kind of pulls himself out of games with nagging injuries and stuff. So it's a little concerning, but I'd franchise tag Amari Cooper if I'm Dallas. He's the guy I'd place the tag on. I'd probably sign Byron Jones. He's a lockdown corner. He doesn't get very many picks, but he's really good. And Dak Prescott, this is where the dispute has come in because he said, I'm not going to train in Dallas until I get a new contract. He hasn't said he's not going to be with the team, but it's looking like if they don't pay him, he could be trending towards a holdout because Dak wants to be paid like the best quarterback in the league. And that's the way that these salaries have been going. It's just if you're the next guy in line, you get the next biggest contract. I mean, Jared Goff, Matt Ryan, Carson Wentz, Derek Carr, all these guys, Matthew Stafford, they all signed contracts to become the highest or, second highest, massive contracts to become some of the highest paid players in NFL history. And all those guys are on the same tier as Dak, They're not going to be Super Bowl MVP, go out true, win you a ton of games, but they're a franchise quarterback. You'll make the playoffs most of the times with them. They're all Dak level. And I would say it kind of varies with some of those teams on whether they like the contracts or not. If you look at Atlanta and the Rams, they'd probably tell you, man, I wish I wasn't paying Matt Ryan and Jared Goff a ton of money. The Eagles, on the other hand, they're kind of saying, Carson Wentz carried us to the playoffs. He played super well down the stretch last year. I like Wentz, so it just kind of varies. But Dak wants to be paid as the highest paid quarterback in the league. He wants to make upwards of probably $35 million a year, which is a lot of money. But at the same time, Dallas is thinking, we love you, Dak. We want you here, but we're thinking maybe 30, 31 mil, not quite 35. So there's a disconnect there, and there's been a lot of contract talks. But here's another thing to think about in this is the NFL's collective bargaining agreement, which was agreed upon in 2011, it extends through the 2020 season. So after 2020, they're going to redo the collective bargaining agreement, alter the salary cap, probably raise it, and so salaries are going to be looking a lot higher after that. A guy like Daniel Jones, I love Daniel Jones, but he's not quite there yet. He's probably like a top 18 quarterback in the league right now. If he can get to be like a top 12 or 10 quarterback, by the time he signs his contract after his 5th-year rookie deal, he very well may be making $55 million a year. That's the way that these contracts are heading, which is kind of crazy. So if I'm Dallas, I would actually sign Dak to a multi-year contract, lock him up for a long time so that when the collective bargaining agreement comes, you can keep him at a price that is super high right now for 2 years, and then when the bargaining agreement ends, will be lower than probably like average for 4 years. So I would sign Dak to like a 6-year type of contract. And I would give him, the 35 that he's asking for. I wouldn't go up to like 40 million. I think that may be just too high. But I'd probably give him around 35 million a year for 6 years. I know that seems high for a lot of guys on Dak Prescott. So what I'd also do is I'd make it a lot more front heavy, put a lot more money on the first 2-3 years so that if, down the road you're not really sure on him, you can cut him and won't take as big of a cap hit. The 49ers did a phenomenal job with that with Jimmy Garoppolo, where if they were to cut him today, they would only have to pay him $4 million over the next few years. They super front-loaded his contract. I don't think Dallas can maneuver it enough to make it so that, cutting Dak would only cost them like $4 million. But if they can, and they're probably not going to cut Dak, but if they sign him to this big contract and they don't like the way he's playing and they want to trade him or something, they can make it a lower cap hit, maybe 15 to 25 mil over the last 3 years of his contract. Front loaded, give him a big signing bonus because that way Dak feels like he's getting a lot of money up front. He wants the money now, and maybe his next contract he'll be more team friendly, go for pieces. Another thing to consider here with Dak is the weapons around him, because at the end of the day, Michael Gallup was a 1,000-yard receiver, or at least close to that. He was great. Amari Cooper is a pretty consistent Pro Bowl caliber player. Ezekiel Elliott's one of the best running backs in the league. And Dak Prescott has routinely the best offensive line in the league. So yeah, his numbers were great, but they weren't as good as they may have seemed, like I just showed you guys. And the thing is, Dak has top-tier talent around him, and signing him to a massive contract like this may force you to lose guys like Amari Cooper or Byron Jones, who are also free agents. So again, the Cowboys are in a tough spot. But at the end of the day, if I'm Dallas, I think Dak's my guy, I don't think he's like a top 5 quarterback in the league, but he's definitely like top 10-ish. I would sign him to a long-term contract with a pretty big deal now that won't be as big in 2 years when the collective bargaining agreement ends. And so that way Dallas and Dak can reach a compromise, find a way for Dak to be happy with his money and Jerry to be happy with his money. Anyways, guys, that's all for tonight. Done talking about Dak and Jerry. Hopefully next time we can do a video on why my G-Man, Daniel Jones, is going to win an MVP in the Super Bowl next year. That is MVP of the regular season and Super Bowl MVP. But, yeah, go G-Man. But that's all. Thanks for watching. This has been The Last Word.